Hello, today I'm going to talk about pnpm and the reason it is so performant. My name is Zoltan Kochan. I live in Ukraine. Currently I work for Bit on dependency management. Before that I worked for Just Answer for about 9 years. And since 2016 I'm the lead maintainer of pnpm. Before talking about pnpm, let's briefly talk about other Node.js package managers. So npm was the first one, and it is the most popular one. In the past, it used nested node modules directory structure, but this structure had many disadvantages. Like, for instance, many packages were duplicated inside node modules, and also because it used nesting, the directory were sometimes very deep, and on Windows there was there were Windows long path errors. In order to solve these issues, the npm team came up with an alternative node modules structure that they called a flat node modules or a hoisted node modules, and they shipped it in npm version 3. Around that time, Alexander Google came up with an alternative approach to fix the issues of nested node modules. His idea was to use symlinks. So symlinks allowed to create like virtual nesting without actually nesting directories into each other. This idea was then borrowed by Rico Stackruz, and he created pnpm using the same approach. And recently afterwards, I have joined pnpm, and since then I'm maintaining it. A bit later, Yarn was made public, and Yarn was created by Facebook to solve some other issues of npm, like non-determinism and speed. npm is the official package manager shipped by Node.js. In the past, it had many issues, as I said. It was non-deterministic because it did not have a log file. It was extremely slow, and it had no monorepo support since very recently. In the past, there were many jokes about the unreliability of npm. Facebook created Yarn. Since then, it is maintained by the community. They have solved a lot of the issues of npm, and I think it was the best package manager for some time. In V2, they came up with a radically new approach to solve some of the issues with node modules. They introduced plug and play, which is on by default. This is a very interesting technique to manage dependencies. Some love it, some don't. Since version 16, Node.js ships Yarn with Corpec, as well as pnpm. So if you use Node.js 16, you can run Corpec enable, and both Yarn and pnpm will be available in your CLI. pnpm was created completely by open source contributors. It was developed around the same time as Yarn. So it's not a new package manager. It's as old as Yarn. It was actually public earlier than Yarn. pnpm is supported by a lot of great companies. For instance, I work for Bit now, and a lot of my day-to-day tasks are related to pnpm. And as I said, it is shipped by Node.js through Corpec. So it's kind of official as well as Yarn as well. It has some legitimacy to it. pnpm gained a lot of popularity in the last 2 years. As you can see, the number of downloads steadily increases. And this year we already have 3 times more downloads than last year. And we have a lot of big, well-known companies that use pnpm. So let's talk about this node module structure that is created by pnpm. As you can see on the left, when you have a project that has only one single direct dependency, Express version 4, if you run npm install and you open your node modules directory, you will see all these different packages there, even though they are not in your dependencies. This is because npm hoists all the indirect dependencies. And if you run pnpm install and you open node modules, you will see only those 3 files, .pnpm, .modules.yaml, and express. And 2 of these files are actually hidden files. So you will only get your direct dependency in the root of node modules. As a result, if you will import cookie in a project maintained by npm, your code will work because cookie is hoisted to the root of node modules. With pnpm, this won't work because cookie is in some secret place where I will show later. But this is a very dangerous situation because if you will use cookie but you won't add it to your dependencies, it might happen that Express in some newer version, in a new patch version, will stop using cookie. And as a result, it won't be hoisted to the root of node modules, and your code will break even though you did not change anything. With pnpm, this won't happen because you won't be able to ever require dependencies that is not in your dependencies. But where is cookie if it's not in the root? So actually, it's hidden inside this .pnpm folder. pnpm places all the dependencies, direct and indirect, to a flat directory structure inside .pnpm. And the dependencies are linked into these isolated sub-node modules folders using symlinks. So actually the express that you see in the root of your node modules is just a symlink to this hidden express folder inside .pnpm. And cookie, which is a dependency of express, is symlinked to the dedicated node modules folder of express. This isolated node modules is very, very good for monorepos. With monorepos, if you use a hoisted node modules, your project will be able to use not just the sub-dependencies of your dependencies, but also any dependencies of any other projects. As you can see here, both foo and bar have one dependency, and both of these dependencies are hoisted to the root node modules folder of your monorepo. So as a result, bar will be able to import dep of foo, even though it's neither a direct nor an indirect dependency of bar. So once you release bar and someone will install it, it will break immediately. With an isolated node modules created by pnpm, this is not a problem because you only get your direct dependencies symlinked to node modules, and nothing is actually hoisted to the root node modules folder of your monorepo. All the sub dependencies are hidden inside this .pnpm folder. So foo will not be able to require dependencies of other projects in the monorepo. You might ask why other package managers don't use this approach. Well, actually, npm wants to add the pnpm styled node modules directory as an opt-in because of these issues with monorepos. But this approach has some disadvantages currently because some tools don't like symlinks, like React Native doesn't work with symlinks at all. And many packages in the ecosystem are published with these broken import statements that import indirect dependencies. So this strict node modules breaks many packages. However, pnpm has some workarounds, so you will never have the third issue. And if you have tools that don't work with symlinks, then you can use the node linker hoisted setting, and pnpm will create a traditional hoisted, or otherwise known as flat node modules. So pnpm has you covered. You can use it with any kind of project. And, another issue, another reason pnpm is so performant is because it uses disk space very, very efficiently. You might have noticed that your node modules consumes a lot of space when you use npm or yarn. And if you have like 10 or 20 JavaScript projects on your PC, then your dependencies might consume like 10, 20, 30 gigabytes of disk space. This is actually not an issue with pnpm, because pnpm uses a central content addressable storage to link the files of your dependencies to node modules. A content addressable storage is basically a directory where files are stored at locations calculated from the contents of these files. This means that, for instance, if you have 3 versions of a single package, and all of these versions of the package have a file with no changes, then pnpm will actually write this file only once to the disk, and point, and anytime these packages are installed, it will not create a new copy of these files. pnpm will just create a hard link to a single location in the content addressable storage. So actually, inside your node modules, inside this virtual store, every file is just a pointer to a location in the central content addressable store. As you can see here, like we have project A and project B, and some of the files in these two projects are the same. So they point to the same location on the disk. So we don't have two copies of a file. We have only one copy of the file written to the disk. As a result, when you each time you run pnpm install in a new project, pnpm consumes just a little more space on your disk, unlike npm or yarn, which don't use a content addressable store by default. So you can see on the first install, pnpm uses around the same amount of disk space, but in a subsequent project, when you run pnpm install, it will not consume that huge amount of space again, because the files are already in the store and pnpm just creates new hard links, not copies. Actually, Yarn started to use a content addressable store as well, as an opt-in feature for now, and they plan to make it on by default in the next major version. If you have looked at our benchmarks, you might have noticed that in some scenarios pnpm is several times faster than npm and even faster than yarn. The reason pnpm is faster is because it uses a different algorithm to resolve and fetch dependencies. So both npm and yarn have separate stages for installation. At the first stage, all the dependencies are resolved. On the second stage, all the dependencies are fetched from the registry, and at the last, third stage, all the packages are written to node modules. Unlike npm and yarn, pnpm doesn't have these separate stages. It actually tries to do everything concurrently at the same time. So when it resolves a package, it immediately starts to fetch it from the registry. It doesn't wait for all the other packages to be resolved. This is very efficient. So, and when it starts to write files to node modules immediately when the last package is resolved, but it doesn't wait for packages to be fetched. Some packages are still being fetched, and some others are already written to node modules. You might ask why other package managers don't use this technique. Well, this algorithm actually is very complex, and probably some package managers prefer to be a bit slower, but to have code that is easier to maintain and easier to learn for new contributors. And some of the speed improvements are, of course, possible because we use a content addressable store and because we use a different node modules directory structure. Now this is all about pnpm speed, and I just want to mention probably not widely known feature of pnpm. You can actually use pnpm to manage Node.js versions. So you can use pnpm instead of nvs or nvm or volta. There is a command pnpm nviews, which you can run to install Node.js So for instance, if you want to install Node.js 16, just run pnpm and views -- global 16, and you will have Node.js 16 in your CLI. pnpm has lots of features. You can open up our website pnpm.io and open the feature comparison page. You will see this table where you can see that we have implemented almost all the features that Yarn or npm have, and we have even features that neither Yarn nor npm have as of now, like side effects cache or managing Node.js versions. Thanks for listening to my presentation. Please visit pnpm.io, give our repository a star, and also follow us on Twitter at pnpmjs, and follow me on Twitter. I'm Zoltan Kochan. Thanks. Bye.